We are never going to get detailed explanations about important parts of Lumon's plan, not just for small things like WTF with the goats.
I spent the week reading all the theories, and you've convinced me the water theory is correct.
Okay, great. I never told you about the water theory, but we'll talk about those things and more on Double P Podcast presentation of Milchick Men, a podcast about Apple TV Plus's show Severance Season 2. Tonight we're covering Episode 7. My name is Catfish, and with me as always is someone who desperately wants to meet Milchick in a dark hallway. It's Bubba!
Catfish, I'm so glad that you're here, someone who had their first couloir literally 2 minutes ago.
It was refreshing, but also slightly tiring.
Hey, guys, we are here talking about Season 2, Episode 7 of Severance. Oh boy, Catfish, this was a big, strong episode, and it was entitled Chikhai Bardo. And Bardo, in this type of Bardo, apparently is the Buddhist term for the transitional state in the first moments of death. What is your rating out of 10 for Episode 7?
All right, Bubba. Well, I am going to give this 7 out of 10 quadruple Ds.
Quadruple Ds?
Yeah, delicious design, disappointing drama.
Oh, no.
I'm going to break it down the way you do, Bubba, so people understand what happened to me on this episode.
Yeah.
There are a lot of good/great things in this episode. We finally care about Gemma, Ms. Casey. I blame you for that, Bubba. Just last episode, you asked whether I cared, and I said we cared about their relationship. Maybe it was 2 episodes ago. This is your fault that we had this episode. We get to see some super creepy and extremely well-shot stuff of all the different rooms with even more mystery about what the heck is going on and some really just kinky role playing. We got to see possibly the creepiest of all Lumon employees, which is really saying something, with the weirdly handsome but exceedingly creepy Robbie Benson as Dr. Maurer. He might be my Kier employee of the millennium. I mean, this episode was the perfect Severance episode, trifecta of design, cinematography, and weirdness. Bubba?
Yeah.
You wanted me to care about Ms. Casey. So because of you and you alone, we got an episode that was 95% her. I still don't know how she ended up at Lumon. For most of the episode, I didn't know what time she was in, and I still don't know what they were doing with her and still have no clue about Cold Harbor. In the end, this was a beautifully shot episode with a lot of great stuff that gave me more questions about Gemma than less. And you know, I have been all in favor of them just piling on more weird stuff without explanation. But this just sent me over the edge, Bubba. We had an whole episode about Gemma, and the most important questions that we have about Gemma are completely unanswered. If this was not exquisitely shot and acted and had enough weirdness in it, this would have been much lower for me. This is as low as I could give an episode of Severance. Big fail for me on this episode.
Wow.
Very, very disappointed. They pushed me over the edge, Bubba. Please start explaining something and stop making more things that I don't understand.
Wow, Catfish. So 7 out of 10, that is for you this season the lowest of the low.
Yeah,
low.
By far. Basement City.
For not the first time, and certainly not the last. I'm going to give it a much higher rating than you are. I'm going to give this 9 single U's out of 10.
Single U's?
Yes. Well, as you all know, a single U for Severance means master manipulator Milchick makes Mark's misses make a U-turn. And so a single U, 9 out of 10. Catfish, boy, you and I are on completely opposite sides. I thought it answered so much. We saw the testing floor. We know what it's for. The one thing I thought, Catfish, what is Lumon's purpose? You know, think about the pregnancy last year, right? Like, hey, yes, we have our people on MDR on the severed floor, but it's also outside. You don't want to go through the pain of pregnancy? Well, guess what? That can be severed away, and you're never going to have to go through the difficulties of childbirth. Hey, you have fear going to the dentist? Guess what? You don't ever have to go to the dentist, and that can be severed away. You have a fear of flying? Guess what? It can be severed away. You really get sick and hate having to write 50 thank you notes after every Christmas? Guess what? That can be severed away. The quote unquote painful parts of your life can be severed away. And maybe that's how you tame the four tempers, is because they're never a part of your life. They get severed away. I thought it was perfect. I thought it was wonderfully acted. I didn't think it was very funny. I think this is the most tragic of the tragic. We think the innies of MDR have a tragic life. No, Gemma's had it worse than anybody. To hell with MDR, free Gemma. And so the main negative, the only negative I have about this episode, is that we are a very lighthearted, silly podcast who did things like FMK takes on the innies. How are we going to do an FMK take on the innies? And so I suddenly thought, you know what, we could do it. Because Gemma has so many looks. She's got her dour, short-haired little bob of Miss Casey. She's got her long hair, hey, I'm a hip college professor look. She's got her, I'm rocking the 80s when I'm on this crashing flight look. She's got her slick back, I'm in my gray-green jumpsuit down on the training floor. And she's also got her, I'm a 50s homemaker here signing these Christmas card look. So let's hear it, Catfish. FMK for Gemma, Miss Casey. Who's your F, who's your M, who's your K of all the possible Miss Caseys? And she's a lovely actress. We certainly think she's very beautiful. But FMK, let's hear it.
She is, I did a deep dive on her, Bubba. I did not realize this. Do you realize that she is half Nepalese, half Australian?
Well, when I did see her at Outback Steakhouse that time, she was having pho. So I thought that's got to be something.
Oh boy, it just stepped into it right there. So why not I continue to step into it? All right, I'm going to F the hot college professor with the long hair. Sure. I am going to marry the bodysuit Gemma. Okay, and I'm going to put out of her misery, for her sake, the 50s thank you writing Gemma.
Oh, okay, well, I'm going to go slightly similar. I'm going to F the jumpsuit hair slick back Gemma. I'm going to marry Miss Casey with her, prim and proper and very calm voice. And I'm going to kill the poor 80s Gemma on the crashing airplane, because I'm pretty sure I actually had many relatives rocking that, my old relatives in the 80s actually rocking that hairstyle. And it scares me to be brought there. So
all right. So basically what you're saying is you want to kill some of your relatives. I'm glad you're bringing objectivity to this. All right.
Well, speaking of objectivity, we are sexist men who look at this lovely actress and are like, ooh, FMK. So as we always do to bring objectivity to this, Catfish, we're going to do the same with Dr. Maurer. So you've got dyed hair, smiley-faced dentist, Dr. Maurer. We've got, I've got a little beard and a little mustache wearing my Christmas sweater, 50s, Dr. Maurer. And we've got our mustachioed, very nervous, but wants to get you something to drink, flight attendant, Dr. Maurer. What FMK those?
Okay, let's be very clear about this. Just as it was with Gemma, this is all based on look, because in every version of Dr. Maurer, I would completely fuck him. All right, so definitely you've got to go fuck porn stash Dr. Maurer. And then you have got to marry the bearded and sweatered Dr. Maurer, and like any dentist bringing you pain, you got to kill dentist Dr. Maurer.
Marry the dentist. What does your mom tell you? Marry a dentist. That's a provider with a good salary. Then you're gonna kill.
All right. Okay.
You're gonna kill the. Sure. Let's kill the flight attendant. The plane's gonna crash anyway, and we will. I guess that means F the Christmas sweater wearing. Dr. Maurer. There you go. Wow. I was worried we couldn't be light and silly on a podcast about an episode that was so tragic, and we were light and silly.
Wow, that is amazing. All right, Bubba, if we got some we always say who cares what we think, especially this episode, people are going to be very angry at me and I understand why. I do agree with you. This was a very heartfelt episode and very painful and made us care more about Gemma, a lot more about Gemma's plight and a little bit about Gemma and Mark's relationship. But we say, who cares? We think. We want to know what you think. How do you tell us what to think? Well, you leave comments on the YouTube video. You leave Apple reviews. You tweeted us. We're at double PHQ. That's the word double. And then the letters PHQ everywhere. All the social media. Set up a TikTok for Bubba. He needs help. You can also reach us at hello@doublepmedia.com. Bubba, have some people reached out to us already about episode 7? Where has all the fun gone?
They have, but instead I'm going to go first to Thomas Rafferty, who has reached Keir level of feedback when he said, last week they were talking about, hey, you want to reach Wintertide? Well, if you rearrange the letters of Wintertide, you get Twin Dieter. Thomas Rafferty, Keir level feedback. All of this is Keir level feedback on episode 7.
But I think Thomas Rafferty needs to get on to the writing team of Severance for the next couple seasons. Just to be there, just to be their guide to hidden Easter egg guy.
Gen X Cat Mom never obeys the scale of 1 to 10.
I love it.
She gave it an easy 11. Double M's malicious mowers out of 10.
Whoa.
She said that dentist is a total D-bag. I don't know where to begin or what to say that isn't great. The cinematography, the color grading, the directorial style, it's beyond the beyond. How can a show keep getting better every week? She loved it, Catfish, 11 out of 10.
She loved it for the same reasons that I really loved it. There was nothing about it that was negative to her, which is what I like. Sayali at Yapayali in Blue Sky says, going to have to rewatch that episode of Severance, but wow. And I'm going to say this wrong. Daikin Lockman, and that is Gemma, is an insanely good actress. Can't believe we've only barely seen her in this whole show. So wicked. Turn my friend onto your podcast. We are sorry, Sayali's friend, that you are listening to this podcast.
Oh, yeah. We apologize. Link Hogthrob, this is 3 Keir level feedback in a row. He said, who knew this was going to be a Miss Casey Gemma-centric episode? Whoa. Lumon is making their Severance product much better with various use cases, and Gemma is the test pilot prior to launch. What if MDR's number work is removing feelings from Gemma's consciousness based on her chip's feedback? Ooh. That's pretty good. Holly Hunt Pants, who's at Hunt Pants on Twitter, wrote, getting emotionally destroyed by the things I love is my brand. Holly gave this a 1,000 out of 10. Or
no,
excuse me, a 10,000 out of 10.
Another loyal listener, Nicholas Fortuna said, Severance, Chikhai Bardo just put the show into orbit. I'm sitting here with the credits in the background, feeling like someone just tossed me into an emotional blender. The bar has been officially raised.
Man, and then here is a new listener feedback that I think is really going to make us heartbroken here, Catfish. It's from Punk Nub on Blue Sky, and Punk Nub wrote, obviously the macro data they are refining directly contributes to the way Gemma is tortured on the testing floor. Also, F Milchick. I hope somebody chokes him out. Hit him with a chair too. Wow. Hating Milchick here on the Milchick Men podcast? Punk Nub.
Not possible.
That's tough.
Listen, Punk Nub, what you're saying is you found a new hero and you want us to change this podcast to Mauer Men. I hear what you're saying, but we're going to keep it as Milchick Men for now.
Guys, we are 2 weeks away from our buddy Double M leading us into the Wheel of Time Season 3 coverage. That's Matt Murdock, Priscilla TV on YouTube, and we're dealing with Season 3 of Wheel of Time. That's going to be on the Busting Blockbuster audio feed in 50 days.
Yes.
Catfish and I are back on the Parsec Passion podcast feed, audio podcast feed, talking Andor Season 2. Guys, we love goals. We love you subscribing if you're on audio podcast or YouTube. YouTube, we're going to give you another little goal this week. So far, the most likes we've had on a Severance podcast is 136. So hit that like button. See if we can get a like number in the 150s. Let's go.
Wow. Bubba, let's do it. And
All right.
We're only 300 for subscribers from 10,000.
That's right. 280-ish away.
Oh, that's good.
Catfish, we ask this every week, and you were tough on this episode, but based on this week in the history of the world and this episode, what would you like to have severed, removed from your brain? Would you like to have that dentist chair removed? What do you want removed?
Bubba,
yeah.
The other night, I sat outside of my backyard, shoeless.
Oh, no.
Wearing a t-shirt and shorts, reading a book, with my dog just sitting at my feet until 8 p.m. at night. Now, I do not want to forget this happened, but I would like to forget that it happened in February when it's supposed to be far too cold, even here in Los Angeles, for me to be able to do that.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Boy, I think you're going to have trouble forgetting this, the way the earth is heating up. You may have every February where, no shoes required. Well, Catfish, that's a real life severance. And guess what? For me, yeah, I'm also wanting to have something severed, but not, this is a different. I don't want it severed from me. I want it severed from our international audience. Now, I looked at the stats. According to YouTube, about 50% of the people who watch our YouTube podcast are not from the United States. Our audio podcast, I had to do a little bit of math. Hopefully I got it right. But about 28% of our audio podcast downloads are not from the United States. So you guys, I want you guys to have severed from your mind what the country I live in, the United States, is doing. Earlier this week, the United States pretty much said all our allies were not siding with you in a vote where we voted with Putin's Russia and North Korea. And so when you vote like that, it kind of tells you which side you're on. Are you on the good guy side? No, you're not on the good guy side when you do that. Later, this same week, we forced Romania to release 2 human traffickers so they could be brought back to the United States because they support our president. They've trafficked
Bubba, don't forget
humans.
Breaking news, just to let you know when
literally
this is happening.
What, an hour ago?
Just a few hours ago, our president and vice president yelled at the leader of the Ukrainian people, basically once again, for some reason, just siding with Russia's view of the world.
Right. The United States has supported many people with money because their goals match our goals. And in keeping Putin at bay, we've given money away to everybody. But suddenly out of the blue, we decide that, no, we deserve our money back. And, that could be fiscally responsible, or it could be that Putin says, don't support Ukraine anymore. And so anyway, I want you international listeners to have that severed from your brain, that your good ally is pretty much stabbing you in the back. I want you to forget it, because if you remember the first Trump presidency, a lot of our allies stopped giving us top secret information because they knew if they gave it to Trump, it would somehow end up with Russia knowing about it as well. So rather than sabotage us this way, know that we're sabotaging ourselves. We've got measles outbreaks, and our head of health and human services doesn't believe in vaccines. So you don't need to attack us allies. Just know we're killing ourselves. So you guys get severed. Americans, we have to remember this day in infamy. This week in infamy, the first of, let's see, what's 50 times 4?
208.
208. So yeah, oh boy, we're getting real serious, Catfish. We need some Severance Sillies. Is anything that really made you giggle or chuckle this week?
The only thing I found funny was the student's paper that Mark was reading when he met Gemma, and that was All's Quiet on the Western Blunt, drug use during World War I. Brilliant title. Gemma was right. The rest of the paper should fail, and that one gets an A.
Now, guys, listeners, did you have a favorite Severance laugh this week? Very tragic episode, but it's always good to have a little chuckle when dealing with the world of luminaries. Hey, Catfish, it is time to dive into this recap. We kind of had 3 things we were bouncing all around. We were bouncing around the Mark and Gemma meet cute and the 5 years of their relationship that we get to see. That 5 years comes from the post-show video. We have the present timeline where Mark is passed out in his living room, and we've got the hideous, terrible, tragic world of the testing floor. What do you want to talk about first?
I feel like we should take care of Mark first, since there's really not a lot of movement in his storyline. Something important we were waiting for finally happened.
Devin and Ragabi, they've gathered around Mark. This drives me crazy. Nobody turns on any lights. Okay, Mark is passed out. Maybe you want the room dark, but if you don't need it, why does nobody ever have a light on in their living room? Poor Mark. Devin is telling Ragabi to stop it. She's seen what's happened to her brother. She is like, stop this. No more, no more. It's settled effing law. You can't integrate him, lady. The end. Ragabi comes out and, doesn't keep it a secret anymore. She's like, guess what, Devin? Gemma is alive. Ooh. You can't imagine what this would be like to suddenly believe. And I think Devin does believe it, don't you? I mean, she saw
I believe
Mark
I believe that Devin believes it. I mean, I'm not sure that Audi Mark would have pursued it as much if Devin hadn't pushed him. So I believe that she believes, but she is also she's amazing. I mean, we don't see a lot of her on this show, but you and I have acknowledged she's the smartest person on this show. She's got an amazing, amazing heart. She's a fierce protector of her family. I mean, the only thing that's wrong with Devin is that somehow she saddled herself to Rickon.
Catfish, you say that, but there is something wrong with Devin.
What is it?
She's got a fever, and the only prescription is Miss Cobell.
Wow, that is great. I mean, this is really just like out of the fire into the frying pan. I thought it was crazy. Great. I mean, look, this is the only time that I am going to take Ragabi's view of the world over Devin's. It's when she says that Cobell is like tried and true Keir loyalist. It is in her bones. That is all she lives for. But you know what? Devin don't care about that. This is kind of a crazy move. But Devin's like, I'm in. I didn't know whether Ragabi's at one point is like, all right, well, I guess I got to bail. I don't want to be around here for this. And then Mark, ding, ding. He says the title of the episode. Thank God.
He's mumbling that in his sleep, in his delusions. He wakes up at the end of the episode. His sister asks him, where'd you go? Which is, of course, exactly what the nurse asked Gemma down on the severance floor about what room she had gone to. And what do you think? Are we supposed to take as an audience that Mark, when he was in his state, he was the one having flashbacks to his 5 years with what? How did you interpret that, Catfish? Or was he just in La La Land and we shouldn't take the dreams as his brain?
I think that some of it might have been that as a convention to kind of get us in. And then I don't, but he was just remembering when he met, and then we saw the rest of the story. So that's kind of where I'd like to go next, because the last story is this has got a lot of emotional heft to it, but the last story is just heartbreaking.
So you want to go back in time. Remember the time when we fell in love. Catfish, the biggest thing about this flashback is that for a moment, it's not winter outside. It was incredible not to see snow on the ground in this college campus flashback. I was like, holy smokes, this is great.
Yeah, and we see Mark has a beard. Yeah. At first, I'm trying to figure out what's going on because they're sitting in like reclining chairs, but there's books in the background. I'm like, what kind of library is this? Whatever it is, it's a blood drive. And basically, like any medical or any other device we've seen on this show has been Lumon. And so this is it. Lumon is harvesting this blood. And so they lounge in bed and did you believe that as a meet cute? Absolutely.
Now, let me say, I worked at a university and I did give blood. The first time I think I ever gave blood, I'm pretty sure was at this university where the university was having a blood drive. And now that's why I've got an innie. I thought it was very believable. Obviously, they had chemistry. I don't know if it's exactly easy to pick somebody up as they've got needles in their arm, but I believed it. And then we jump forward and, hey, they're a couple, Catfish, a cute couple.
Mark needs to get his hearing checked because he brings her an ant farm because she loves plants.
Uh, have you ever bought the wrong present? I think this kind of thing happens all the time. You're like, oh,
I don't know if I would confuse ant with plant unless unless it was casually tossed off during some activity in which I was focused on something else.
well, now Catfish, she says, hey, I don't love ants, but I love farms. And so let's go big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Is Gemma so important that, this kind of toss off line about I love farms, that if somewhere that's in her sight, somehow in her brain and Severance can access that, is that why they're building a goat farm? Like, is she that important that they're trying to make her go? Let me do one other thing because that seems so outlandish.
It really is. She's just making a joke. She doesn't like ants, so what's the other part of it? Is a farm.
Well, what did we see in O&D? We saw them 3D printing about a bunch of stuff. And one of the things we see them 3D printing is a little flower water, a little pot with a spout on it that you pour, you would do flowers and plants with. You would water them with this type of device, and they had 3D printed it. And so there is a thought that if Gemma is so powerful, and in this episode, they keep talking about, you're going to get out there and when the world sees you. I mean, Mr. Drummond in an earlier episode said Cold Harbor's going to be, this earth-shattering thing. If that's true, we have wondered, is, Cold Harbor about Mark or her? This episode, to me, really makes it seem like it's about her. And so if she's that important, maybe they are giving her farms. Well,
they do talk about...
Maybe they are 3D printing water, plant watering little buckets because she likes that.
I mean, they do talk about his percentage later on, and that they do say that his percentage has frozen, albeit at a very high number.
Yeah, because of his nosebleed. So Mark is the one increasing the percentage, but is the percentage her?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. But also, I just want to note here that they're admitting, without knowing it, what I suspected, and that is that this reintegration is messing with his completion percentage.
Yeah, shameful, Mark. How dare he? Now, in their relationship, they are a couple. They're married. What's the next step? Everybody says, oh, you're married. When are you going to have kids? And they're already thinking about it. Mark proactively buys a crib. And this is before she's pregnant. He's buying a crib because it's on sale. I'm not sure you should really do that without telling your wife, but he did it. And we have this almost staccato, flashing images of seeing them together. It seems like they have the perfect life. Is this something we're going to revisit and see more troubles? They have some troubles in this episode, but not much. Would you call them the perfect couple, Catfish? The perfect life?
I mean, their troubles revolve around later on not being able to have a child. So that's, which even seems to be mostly resolved by the time she has her car accident.
You mean the trouble between them is resolved?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The trouble that has to do
that we see. That's correct. That we see.
Yeah. I mean, it is, not to give away the end, but since I've already brought it up, he is working on something, but he seems to be genuinely working on it, not using an excuse not to spend time with her. He just didn't want to spend time. Probably she might have to hang out. It's either with Rickon or Rickon personality adjacent people, and he just doesn't have time for that. So their issues do seem mostly resolved by the time that it is over.
Just because of that, even though we're an audio podcast and all our audio podcast listeners wouldn't like it, I'm going to do some charades. So I'm going to hold up one of my fingers. Can you guess which one?
It's going to be the thumb. It's always the thumb. You always give me the thumb.
How dare you? How dare you? Now, speaking of your favorite character, Rickon, he's an outdoorsman, man. He's outdoorsman. He's got it in his veins, Catfish. He was climbing up edges in middle school and cliffs. Don't you love it? And we find out Gemma doesn't want any wine because she's pregnant, Catfish. But we can't focus on that. We have to focus on Rickon. So you and I act out the background talk between Rickon and Mark. You ready?
Okay. Obviously, you have to be Rickon.
I'll play the hero. Okay. You and I will ramble together someday. The two of us. It'll be a grand adventure.
I feel like we spend a lot of time together.
Not enough. No, Mark.
Really? What are we going to do there?
Did you know you can purify urine into drinkable water?
Why would I do that?
To experience the beauty and wonder of nature. And scene. Catfish, those, I'm going to get in trouble. I don't know how to say it like this. I'll say it, then tell me if I need to edit it. Who is the person in your life who most reminds you of Rickon? Like, do you have a in-law, a relative, somebody who's just perfect?
I mean, I guess it would still be Adam Marcus, probably.
Director Adam Marcus. Look him up on IMDb, everybody. Great guy.
Look him up. You can leave that in.
Things are perfect. Like, this is the apex of married life. And then we have what I call the David Lynch-like wipe to the antithesis of perfect. Gemma is having trouble breathing. She's wincing. Blood is running down her leg. She's in the shower. Catfish, they're losing the baby. Oh, my God.
It is horrible. And also, Mark is going to have to get redressed for work. His suit is completely drenched. So let's remember the worst thing that happened that morning. Mark had to get redressed. So Mark and Gemma go to what we all know as the BFC.
BFC?
Yeah, the Bootsman Fertility Clinic. Bubba, you noted here that Bootsmann means bogeyman in German. Holy cow. And who could possibly the bogeyman? The boogeyman.
Yes.
Boogeyman. Well, we do see Dr. Maurer pass them in the waiting room.
Oh, man, Dr. Maurer. This is crazy. So if that wasn't a sign that, hey, there's Dr. Maurer in this waiting room, the fact that the new patient intake form has the Lumon little water droplet, blood droplet logo there on it, this is not a good sign. Lumon is part of a fertility clinic. Oh, my God.
I mean, what are they not into?
You know, we keep cutting forward, listeners. You know this. So they cut. She's got a shot. Mark is giving her a shot. Is that needle as long as the needle that goes into his brain? And he's telling his wife, third time's the charm. Oh, my God.
Bubba, I'm just thinking, is the only thing that Lumon doesn't produce is hand oil for teenagers, given their stance on seed spilling?
You know, Catfish, that I'll edit out. So we all know the show didn't have to continue on. We all know how this is going to go. It's gone poorly. This kind of thing can obviously cause a lot of stress and painfulness in a relationship. But before we get to really the true low point, Gemma is there. She's got these cards, and these cards are, you know, the person stressing. They're the
funny thing is, these pictures, the people, it looks like the same figures you see on those posters on the wall that tell you how to do CPR on somebody.
Yes. Well, Catfish, did you recognize it? I didn't recognize it immediately. But the image on this is the exact same image on the card that Dylan stole from O&D in season 1.
Bubba, you are not going to believe this, but it is true. When I saw that card, I was like, I've seen this card before on the severed floor. I didn't remember who saw it or whatever, but I'm like, I've seen this card on the severed floor.
When you look at that card, do you see it the way Gemma does? She says it's one person fighting himself, defeating his own psyche. The death of his
her
ego.
Explanation for it is, well, they look exactly the same. And I'm like, they don't have a lot of distinguishing features. It's not like you're like, well, you want to make one of the guys blonde? That's not going to make him look much different than the other guy. So no, I did not buy that, nor what she is getting involved in. But clearly there is something here that is sort of, she's going down a different direction. We don't know.
Yeah, Mark is dismissive of her thoughts. Like,
yeah,
you just kind of made light of it, Catfish, the Mark in this relationship, this podcast, Mark.
He destroys the crib. She's listening
brutal.
to it. He's just like, maybe it was just a real piece of crap anyway. And he and Gemma cuddle on Christmas, but they're separated. Now, again, maybe I misinterpreted this, but they did not seem like people who did not care for each other.
No.
In the last scene where he stays home to work on a project. He's going to skip charades. He tells her to go. Gemma leaves.
Well, I want to pause before she officially leaves, Catfish. You say they still seem, I agree with you. This did not look like a couple that was about to go through a divorce or anything. But there is a distance between them that happened. And it was there in the scene where they're cuddling around the Christmas tree, where it's a scene, anybody's been in a long time relationship. You know, it's like, hey, I'm focused on my thing. You're going to go to your thing. You know, you don't think that much about it. But the fact that Gemma's leaving and says, I love you, and he's wrapped up in his own thing. It's not meant to be evil. It's something I think we all recognize. But the fact that she kind of has to say it twice, before she gets the return, I love you. Let's go from there. Mm-hmm. Is that enough to where you could go to conspiracy land and say Gemma volunteered for this? Is there any way, because he's not saying I love you back, he's crazy, that it's suddenly like Gemma's like, our relationship's destroyed. I'm going to volunteer to go with Lumon.
Let me drive our listeners crazy by moving the catfish question I had right up to this point. And that catfish question is, before we get into it, did Gemma deserve what she got? Because clearly she is... If she is, and from what we see from later on, although again, that part is still not clear about, she's insistent about wanting to see Mark, but it's still unclear to me, like, where her head's really at there and how much she remembers of Mark, because she's not like, she goes along with a lot of stuff before she goes crazy and mauls Mauer, but she definitely had to participate. I feel like she for sure participated in volunteering to do this, probably with the promise of they would help her with a child, or also maybe sever her so that she wouldn't think about not having a child. But I feel like, yes, Gemma deserves some of this because she signed up for it. I am 98% sure that she participated in her fake death and volunteered for Lumon.
If you are incorrect and the 2% is correct, in that they took her because they knew her and she has this, she has what they want, they tested her blood so much, this is the type of person we like. Will you rescind everything you said and sever yourself?
I will rescind everything I said, but only at that point. I will say that Gemma doesn't deserve it if she didn't volunteer for this.
How about this? Even if you did volunteer for this, I mean, all the innies we know volunteered for it. Do they deserve? All the MDR innies, they volunteered for this. Do they deserve it?
Oh, that is a great point. But the difference there is although her innie may not deserve it, her outie, who seems to be, or at least a different part of her, is on the testing area, and that person, if she volunteered, deserves it.
Let's get to that testing floor, Catfish.
Let's do it.
This is crazy. And before we even break down and talk about the story beat by beat, how many innies must she have? We talk about Mark's got an innie personality, soul, whatever you want to say. He's got an outie personality or soul. But she's got like one version of what we would call an innie for all these rooms she goes into. There's one soul, personality, whatever you want to say it, who only goes into Allentown, and that's the Christmas one, right? There's one that their whole existence is going to the dentist. Holy smoke.
I mean, I was going to say, Bubba, that might have been my introduction for you as someone who loves always being at the dentist. That is horrific. When she says, I was just here.
It's been 6 months. No, it has been 6 months, but I was also just here. Holy smokes. Now, Catfish, some of these names I'm getting from people who claim they found them online. The nurse, apparently, actress Sandra Bernhardt.
Wow, I did not think it was her.
Wow.
I did not think that was Sandra Bernhardt.
Well, they say her name, the character's name is Cicely, and she's asking Gemma, where did you go? And Gemma has done her reading, 50 pages, and Nurse Cicely asks this question. If you were caught in a mudslide, would you be more afraid of suffocating and drowning? Now, what I interpolate from that question is possibly they want to know what she wouldn't want to do so that they can do some severance testing with her. You know, if she was, say, afraid of drowning, I think they'd say, okay, well, let's sever a new personality. That'll be Cold Harbor. And we'll bring her in there and see how she does drowning. And then we'll pull her out and say, hey, do you have any memory of drowning or you know, water torture or whatever?
Right.
I mean, this is horrific.
You know what,
horrific.
they could have just asked Helena how it felt, or Helly about drowning.
Right. Well, they
So
have to
it's
bring her into
clear
the
that
room, you know what I mean?
She says the one room she hasn't gone in is Cold Harbor, and so obviously they're waiting for 100% until they put her in Cold Harbor.
This is miserable. So we've got Allentown, Cairns. She's been in all these rooms. And so real quickly, these rooms, they're labeled based on what people have been working on. Mark worked on Allentown. Dylan worked on Tumwater. Helly worked on Sienna. Now we know Mark finished Allentown, so he's working on Cold Harbor. We don't know exactly how what they're doing influences these rooms, these personalities, these experiences that are going to be severed away from Gemma, but this is just horrific. Horrific.
I mean, who's the real hero in all this? Is it all those people doing the work they don't know? Or is it Marvelous Maurer, who's got to put on his acting chops and different sweaters, even when he gets mocked? That was an amazing part where he got mocked for his sweater.
Hey, now, Mr. Drummond.
Maurer's the one doing all the work.
He is. Well, let's talk about him and his costumes.
Yes.
Did he really have to, like, why did he put on the fake beard and mustache to do the scene where she's writing the Christmas cards? Like, the idea is he doesn't want her to remember it, right? We're severancing. Hey, there's something you don't like doing. You don't like filling out, you know, a million thank you notes. Well, here you're doing it. And the real test is just, did the severance work? Do you remember anything about it? And what's interesting and what I fear is that what she remembers about it is always the physical pain. So the actual experience she doesn't, but she leaves the Christmas card writing one. And I should point out, they made her, or at least she was writing those thank you notes with her left hand. But if Correct. You watch her in the flashback, she was using her right hand to write. So, So in the dentist, once again, she doesn't remember anything about the dentist, but she knows when she leaves that room, her teeth hurt, her mouth hurts, right? And so,
right. I mean, that's physical pain you're not going to get rid of.
So do you think, let me ask you this. Do you think severance could get rid of that too? And is that one of the goals? Is that why we have all these rooms to not only, you know, get rid of everything, but somehow trick your brain so that you can go through something painful and not even have the pain anymore?
I mean, that's a physical, I mean, that's a tough thing because it is physical sensations you get from parts of your body that tell you you're in pain. I don't know what the medical literature is on that, but I would have to say that would be tough.
So they have a thing we know that exists outside of the Lumon building where you can go through childbirth. And I'm just going to make a guess that could be painful. So even if you don't remember childbirth, how quickly do you get unsevered? Because, you know, anytime after, you would still be in pain, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, it's funny because we talked about the, you know, what the Chikhai Bardo meant, Buddhism. And, you know, there is also the idea, you know, at least the stories that people are able to meditate and do certain things to suppress physical pain in their bodies. So presumably that is what they're trying to achieve here.
We see that there's a room down on the testing floor which does nothing but monitor MDR's work up on the severed floor. And these people just happen to bear a resemblance to the people they're monitoring. These people are called watchers in the closing credits. There's our boy, Mr. Drummond, and Dr. Maurer, this new guy. Mr. Drummond, are the severance barriers holding? Dr. Maurer, yes, the technology is working. Drummond says so this is one thing that I want to ask you about, because you're like, oh, you know, why would Dr. Maurer thinks he likes her? You like her. Dr. Maurer, she's easy to like. She likes me too. Mr. Drummond, didn't she try to break your fingers? So, dude, Dr. Maurer, she doesn't like you. Like, we don't know if it was like somebody in one of the rooms or if it was Gemma in her kind of little living quarters. But if they tried to break your fingers, Dr. Maurer, they do not like you, man. No means no, dude.
He does not understand that. We might as well call him Pepe Lamauer. Now, Bubba, this is the kind of thing. So presumably all this time we've seen a Gemma. This is the part that I feel like they didn't delineate, though, because you see in her relationship with Mark, you can tell pretty much between the scenes how much time has passed. We can't tell here at all here when these things are happening. And because I was kind of untethered from time, it made it less enjoyable for me, these scenes. Not that I should have been like, Gemma's getting tortured, but it was like, where am I? Leaving me untethered does not help me understand what's going on. Untethered in time.
We find out that the only room Gemma hasn't been in is Cold Harbor. After she's been in all the rooms, according to Dr. Maurer, you will see the world again, and the world will see you. So I'll see Mark. Mark will benefit from the world you're siring. Kier will take away all Mark's pain, just as Kier has taken away yours. Man, Gemma knows this is BS. That give Gemma up.
She
remembers Mark. Like Mark remembers her.
Right.
This Gemma knows Mark.
She does, but but I don't know to what extent. And this was one of the things that I ding this episode for. We're seeing so much of her. Let us know where she is as an innie or whatever. This makes it even worse. She knows Mark. She's kind of trying to get back to him. She's not like, you would think if she had been stuck for a while as an innie, at a certain point she would just be like, I'm not doing this anymore. We don't know why she continues to do it. And again, maybe if I had a sense of time passing, but I still don't understand kind of where her head's at. The outiest of Gemmas that we're seeing.
Well, where does her head have to be? What if it's just like, hey, you do these clinical trials for us and we'll help you, as you even said, with your own fertility treatment. So the end. Why I don't understand why you're so untethered.
How long can that go on? How long has she been in there? Presumably she was in there since her car accident. Yeah. Mark's been working there for a while. So you're telling me it's only like 2 years later, and granted she's going into the rooms, but that's still maybe only half her life, that she's saying kind of nicely like, when do I get to see Mark? Like, I just don't understand where her head's at. Where is she? Emotionally.
Catfish. Yeah, to me it sounds like you're suffering through the four tempers.
Okay.
Whoa, where is she, man? I don't know. I'm dreading that I'm lost. Tell me, I'm filled with malice.
And then what else?
Well, I'm frolicking at your confusion.
Okay, great, okay.
But let me ask you this. So if you could get everything you don't want to do, there are a million things in life every day that you don't want to do, that you could have severed from your mind. Do you think that would get rid of woe in your life? Like, if you could get rid of anything in your life that would cause you any woe, would you do it? Like, is it healthy to do it, to get rid of anything that causes you any woe? Oh God, this traffic's terrible. Sever it, Chip. Hey, I didn't have to sit in traffic at all. Oh, good grief. Here's this big house expense that it's going to cost me money to repair my house. I don't think about the expense at all because I paid it and we've jumped forward in time and I don't have the hole in my roof. Oh, dread. Oh, no.
Okay.
All
hey. Right. Bubba, you sold me from the very beginning. The answer is, of course, yes. All you had to do was ask the question. You didn't need to give me all those details.
Oh, now, frolic in Kier's world is frivolousness. So is there something that is frivolous in your life that you could get rid of by severed and you're all good? What's frivolous? Besides
this podcast?
Trust me, it feels like I'm talking to somebody severed the whole time. I'm like, hey, remember when we did that? What? No, huh?
You severed from the episode itself.
Right. It's playing the song Baby It's Cold Outside, which other people have noted, will note too, during the Christmas thank you card note scene. Baby It's Cold Outside is about a woman wanting to leave and a man not letting her.
Yeah.
A bit right there on the nose. When the doctor tells her, I love you, she can't leave the room until she says, I love you too. Almost like, once again, this is something she experienced with Mark. She couldn't leave the room. She wouldn't leave the room until Mark said it back. So this is hell. This is worse than hell. Gemma is over it. Dr. Maurer comes in, and this to me was the worst thing I've ever seen, man. He tells her Mark's remarried with a daughter. Oh my God.
That was horrible. And then, of course, he says, you are also interested in someone else when you're severed. Don't you think that's possible? Don't you think that could be?
God, creepy.
And that's when she could no longer take it. That is when she could no longer take it. When he implies that they are doing the dirty, severed, which Mark, Helly, and Helena have all done, she could not have it. She, what I like to call, chairs him. She takes
the chair didn't fold. Dr. Maurer did.
It is so good. She steals his key card. She runs for the exit, gets into the elevator.
Oh no.
She goes up one level, and then she turns into Ms. Casey, of course. And there he is, Dr. Sexy, Mr. Milchick.
Okay, doctor, yeah.
He's like, why don't you just go back where you were? And also the menacing Milchick. Oof. And then Sandra Bernhardt comes back, and Gemma back in the cage. Brutal. I have to say, I understand why many people were very, very emotionally affected by this. For someone that we hadn't seen much of, and when we had seen them, they were fairly emotionless. Yeah. Seeing Gemma as Ms. Casey, to see the wide range of things that happens to her is definitely heartbreaking and emotionally affecting. I completely understand all the people who were devastated, awed, inspired, impressed by this episode.
Does the show have to save Miss Casey? Now, forget everything else. Does the show need to end with Gemma free?
I mean, after they spent an entire episode on her and we see what she's going through, I mean, she has it the worst of anybody that we have seen. I mean, you talked about all the horrible things that are happening to, I mean, what's happening to MDR's innies is nothing compared to, it's a cakewalk in the park compared to what's happening to Ms. Casey. So clearly the show has decided in season 2, episode 7, this many episodes in, they're going to make this all about Gemma. And damn it, because Bubba asked the question after episode 5, do we care about their relationship? We're going to make him care. So yes, for sure. Now this is a big deal. A little interesting that they saved it all for one episode, and again they saved it until now. I don't know. Why do you think they saved it until now?
I wonder if this is something that developed between season 1 and season 2. It's a fun twist that it's his wife, but what does that really mean? The show could have done it, and many people wondered if, his wife really did die. But if it turns out, as this episode really says, she never died, then you have to save her. The question I would say is, can Mark and Gemma reunite and ever trust each other again, ever love each other again, ever have a happy relationship again?
I think this could be a very healing exercise, Bubba. I wonder as well. I was listening to the Town podcast, and they were talking to the people who are sort of the production company for this. And part of the reason why this season was so expensive, he intimated at least, was that they went back and changed some major stuff and did some reshoots. And so I wonder if they at one point realized we have to make Gemma important, and this is what was changed.
Catfish, that would also possibly explain why the director of this episode is a debut. This is the very first thing the person's ever directed. It's the cinematographer. The first thing she's ever directed is this episode. Maybe that's true. I don't think it matters. Once again, I was 9 out of 10. I was emotionally moved. I had always considered Gemma as like a story thing, but now she is an emotional thing. And I think the show does have to save her. I think it's more important that the show saves her than saves Mark. That's our thoughts, listeners.
Jim.
Who
is
cares
it just
what we think?
His hair dye? You were really coming down on him for that.
His hair dye. How about his hairstyle? You saw him as the college professor and he looked human, right?
He does look a touch AI-ish.
Yeah, thank you.
As present day Mark.
Miss Wong was right. They're not human.
All right, Bubba. So now we go into our debates before we go into our listener feedback. So let's knock this out because people want to hear the real listener feedback. So this is where I've taken a complete 180 on all the crazy stuff here. So my contention is that now we are not going to get detailed explanations for important parts of Lumon's entire plan. And now you can say, well, Catfish, geez, we saw the doors today. We saw a bunch of other stuff. But I would say we are missing the show where we're going to care all about Gemma. We're going to find out all about Gemma. We leave out some important intermediary stuff that is still making me baffled as to what's going on.
I want to hear you because important parts, you've got to define those. So give me like 3 important parts that you don't think the show will ever explain. Okay.
Let's see. That is a very, very good question. The 3 important parts this show will never explain. Okay, I'm going to ignore the goats. The goats mean nothing.
Thank you. The goats were on the eye chart. Did you see that? There were 2 eye charts, one with letters and one with goats, and the goats would be like turned 90 degrees or whatever. Yeah, little symbols of goats. Yeah.
Love it. All right. So their entire plan is going to be, I think you put me on the spot here. I'm gonna send you in my comments on this episode on YouTube. I'm gonna comment 3 important big things.
Well, how about this? If it just turns out, and I'm using just, but if it turns out that Lumon's goal is this, we want to develop a world in a way so that the mind never has to live through things it doesn't want to. The mind never has to experience these things it never wants to. It can just blip them away through severance. If that is the big goal, is that going to be disappointing to you because maybe you imagine something more, or is that good enough? Like, okay, so Lumon, it's not about bringing Kier back from the dead. It's not about transferring consciousness into immortality. And their thing is just, we're developing this because Kier said, the painful parts of life are painful. We need to remove them. That's our goal.
No, I feel like it has to be more than that. And I think whenever we find out about Cold Harbor, which pray to God, I hope we get it by the end of this season. We must have to know what Cold Harbor is by the end of this season.
No, I think, once again, this is a guess. Some critics have seen at least 9, maybe all 10 of this season's episode. I think this was it. I think we've seen 2 different images of a car in water. We just found out that Gemma, if she had a choice, would really not want to drown. I think that's it. They're going to put her in a car that's underwater, going underwater, and they're going to see if she remembers it. I think that's Cold Harbor. So that, like, the thing she fears the most, drowning, or would fear the most, drowning, they're going to put her through it and then see if she does. And if they pull her out and her brain doesn't remember any of it, they're going to say, we did it. We've removed it. So that's my guess.
All right. Well, I mean,
because in the show open, there's a car partially submerged in water. And where does that come from? Who knows? Where does it come from? Why does it exist? Who knows? So now I'm trying to give it a reason because it's in the show open. And that's my thing.
All right, well, that is your thing. You're convinced about the water theory. Again, it's funny that I did choose to skip the show open this week. I have noted it's been slightly different every week. So the last time I saw it, I don't remember seeing the car in the water. So I think they're giving us different stuff every time, which is usually catnip for Bubba.
Well, also, let's just say, so what do you think the lumen symbol is? Is it a drop of blood or a drop of water? Why am I asking that? Because Lumen has these lakes outside the building. There's, in some things we see, maybe even in the show open, I forget if it's in the show open or the claymation video of season 2, episode 1, we see a Lumen water tower right outside. Here in this episode, I made us specifically talk about it because good old Rickon is saying, hey, we could take urine and turn it into drinkable water. Is there something in the water, Catfish? A lot of people, this was the theory that I was reading online. There were people like, oh, look at the water. It's right there everywhere. Mark, when he passed out in the previous episode, it was right when he was about to have a glass of water because he wasn't feeling well. Is there something going on with Lumen in our precious bodily fluids, Catfish?
Oh, well, as long as we keep our purity of essence. And also, yes, Bubba, one thing I forgot to note earlier is because we've always talked about sort of the culty parts of Lumen. Don't forget Gemma being tested by an e-meter
yes,
on tonight's episode. They are leaning in. Scientology, baby. All right, let's get to our listener feedback.
Yes.
Always the best feedback. If I were to rank feedback, it would be my feedback, the listener's feedback, and that would be it. All right, so let's hear it. Our feedback, Comatone said, hey, you guys are hilarious. We appreciate that.
Comatome, stop drinking and taking non-lumen medication. You can really get messed up there.
Speaking of drinking, Web Squirrel says, I play the Severance drinking game where I drink every time there is an awkward pause in a scene. I'm currently having my stomach pumped.
Oh, no, Web Squirrel. So...
Now, you know what? Ms. Catfish and I have come up with a new game when we're watching the new season of Reacher, and that is you drink when anyone says, bizarre, bizarre.
Oh, no. Spoilers there, Catfish.
There you go. John Vase, says, does Severance miss Ms. Cobell? He completely disagrees with me because he agrees with you. He says, totally agreed.
Oh, wow. What did Robin say here, Catfish?
Robin Herzig says, podcast host never read the Lexington letter. OMG, he begged to do this podcast. That's right. I begged to do this podcast.
Remind everybody what the Lexington letter is.
It's a letter that was written in Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh, boy. The Lexington letter was a kind of a written piece of fiction written by the show creators and runners, from what we understand, that came out in season 1. And it talked about almost like a person trying to do investigative work into what the hell was going on with Lumen. Mm-hmm. Molly wrote, the Heli R energy hit me the moment the elevator doors opened on her return in episode 5, and I felt retroactively stupid for believing Helena was her. Then in episode 6, I thought the journey that Heli went on was fantastic. I also thought these episodes had solid grip work. Oh, thank you so much for saying that, Molly. Catfish, do you you always talk about the Emmy Awards. Britt Lauer's portrayal as Heli R and Helena. Is it as wonderful as everybody seems to be saying? And will she be nominated? What do you think? She wasn't for season 1.
I believe that she'll be nominated this year. It's always, the Emmys are kind of funny in that television has changed and has more prestige now. So it used to be when anyone who was like a movie star and went and did, or even big in the movies went and did television, the stupid Emmy voters would be like, oh God, big name. And it still happens a little bit too. So we'll have to see who is in her category for sure. A brilliant listener, Arda Floyd, asked us to bring back the Who's the Worst. So we did the Who's the Worst. And because of that, we got some feedback first, and they deserve to have their feedback listed first. It's Arda Floyd who said, thanks for reading my comment. It felt good we watched it with family, and Bubba, you're right. Eleanor is the worst.
Oh my goodness, holy smokes. Well, other people wanted to say who they thought was the worst. Miss Vicky, who's Vicky Torius on Blue Sky, said, I don't think we know enough about young Miss Huang to know if she is the worst, but there are only a few more episodes to find out. There you go. Mm-hmm.
And Miss Vicky says Dylan G is hilarious. I love how he's been standing up to Milchick. Jake Abramson slightly disagrees because Jake Abramson says Dylan G is the worst.
Whoa.
Dylan G is the garbage of an innie. He's prepared for, and he will betray his fellow innies and will sell them to Lumon. Jake, I felt like you're underselling your cause here. I may not disagree with you, but let's also add to that evidence the fact that Dylan G's innie is going to screw the wife of Dylan G's Audi, and maybe Dylan G's Audi to boot. More evidence for your thoughts.
DMM11 said, I think Bert and Fields will turn out to be the worst couple. They're quite sinister scoundrels.
Oh, my goodness. I'm Patman Spanego. Patman of Blue Sky says, Audi Patman here. We got Audi Patman is back in the world. Well, later on we'll have any Patman. I think good. Bert might end up being the worst. But I think creepy Denether Fields will surprise us by being a positive force, just like Rickon. Boo!
Hey, that was pretty good. Catfish. Okay, we got a lot of feedback about Mark based on episode 6. And Rabzid starts us off by saying, Mark, with that ironclad consent before going downtown.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
Robin Herzig says, Mark ending with a freaking stroke was fireworks for me. I love it.
Now, Bill Kava, he's trying he's going up, you know it, in the cure level feedback. He says the name of the Chinese restaurant there in the show is called Zufu, which translates to grandfather. So therefore, Bill says, Mark is a descendant of Kier, Catfish. It's there in the name.
Bring it, Bill. Mike Junta says, we have an unsolvable one-body problem. Goes on to say, I think Ragabi's sense of urgency can be explained by the Lexington letter.
Ooh, there we go. Ding, ding.
In it, a severed MDR employee whistleblower reaches out to the local newspaper to tell them about her suspicions at the completion of refining a file corresponding with an act of terrorism against a Lumon competitor. The employee is then killed in a suspicious car accident. I think she knows that Mark is getting close to 100% and wants to prevent something horrible from happening. Completion might also mean that Gemma would no longer be retrievable.
That doesn't seem likely. Gemma seems retrievable, Mike, based on this episode. Now, his feedback was on episode 6, so we will have to see. Our good buddy Zombie Italian said he gave episode 6 of Severance 9 out of 10 MBMJ.
MBMJ?
Well, after Mark did the, hit for the Helena Heli trifecta there, they called him Mark Bigelow, Bale Gigolo. Oh, shameful. Shameful. And I don't even want to read this next sentence from Zombie Italian.
Read it,
Catfish.
Zombie goes on to say, good for any Mark smashing any and Audi Heli. I mean, you would never guess that he has that kind of charisma. No, that last part, not the horrible part. That last part was my addition. Go ahead. Mark will be okay, and his integration is moving forward. Devin will be mad. We saw that.
Just sad.
Okay, here is the tinfoil theory. I love it.
Okay.
I haven't seen anyone say yet with Bert and Irving that Bertving, but not with Fields. So not Fertving, but Bertving.
Okay.
Bert was never severed.
Would that be the biggest traitorous act if Bert was never severed and it was all an act with Irving? Oh.
Wow. That would be.
He did say he was a scoundrel, as Zombie Italian points out. And Zombie Italian says he thinks Field has the first severance chip, but it can't switch from being an Audi to an innie, making Fields a permanent innie. These are wonderful, wonderful theories. And he says, all my theories are subject to change until I am proven wrong. Praise Kier. Oh, thank you, Zombie Italian.
Love it. Okay, and we got some bad Bert feedback. DV says, I'm not sure Bert's the bad guy. Fields was creepy. And if his name is a hint, reintegration needs strong magnetic fields. And maybe they're not even bad. Lumon is listening. And I think all over, Kier.
Aw. Our good friend Shirley 777 said, of course Bert is the bad guy. And any Irving she believes already knows he's a bad guy. Remember the video message Audi Bert recorded for any Bert's retirement party. Audi Bert cut it off like the boss and not an employee. And so she thinks that gives it away, Shirley's does. She even continues, I fear for Irving's life. She says she loves us, guys. Thank you so much. Shirley's is apparently a federal employee needing a laugh. Many thanks for, and she says, thanks for making fun of Mark eating alone in a restaurant. I'm single and eat at restaurants by myself all the time, you jerks.
I love it. We need just send out some love to Shirley, our federal employee. I'm also only keeping my job now due to a restraining order from a court. So we'll see what happens there. Cam Shay 23 though says teachers could never be severed because no lesson planning or grading would ever get done since we do it all at home. Hashtag hero Cam Shay a teacher.
Harley Camille, Cam Shay 23. You say you're a teacher and teachers could never get severed. What did we see in this episode? Teacher Gemma got severed. Oh boy.
Oh boy. But now she's not teaching anymore. She's just experiencing horrible things.
Yes.
Cam Shay, would you rather be teaching your class, or going through the different rooms? You tell us.
Boy.
Jules says in season 1, they stated some Lumon employees live in corporate housing. Mark is one of those people. I imagine Irving also lives in corporate housing. I believe that Mark does, maybe only because Ms. Cobell lived there too.
Yeah.
But
if Irving lived in corporate housing, that would explain how Mr. Drummond could easily get keys in.
Yeah, but I thought you explained that perfectly last week. They leave all their stuff in the lockers. Yeah. And, although people at Lumon were surprised that Ms. Cobell was living next to Mark. So I feel that Mark lives in corporate housing, but Irving doesn't. Irving seemed to be living like downtown somewhere hip.
Downtown.
Galen Frose, and I said that wrong, one of my friends said about the Furtving ham dinner party, everyone at that table has buried someone. None of the bodies will be found.
Galen, your friend, has a wonderful way with words. Brilliant. Get Mike wrote, my theory is that Bert was the inventor who created the severance procedure, and he believes that'll be revealed this season. Get Mike continues, I do wonder why he'd be severed himself, though. It's an interesting thing to explore.
Yes. So whether he was severed or not, it's funny because if he was involved with something like that, why is he now in the art department, either as an Audi or an innie? So I don't. So I'm all in on crazy theories. But now we come to the most important feedback, and that is about our boy Milchick, who people presumably have recognized as the hero that he is. Let's see. ByteFrame_primary data loop says Seth Milchick is the main character in Severance and will be the only character to survive when the self-destruct sequence completes. I love it.
Wayne Rogers, a true Kier level fan, wrote, I got a feeling Miss Gretchen and Mr. Seth are an item. I'd be really happy for both of them if it's true. Now, Miss Gretchen theoretically is Audi Dillon's wife, but if she's getting busy with Mr. Seth, boy, we've got another triangle, love rectangle catfish. Whoa.
I mean, I just know that any Dillon and Audi Dillon, they got no shot against Milchick.
Against Milchick, no.
That sexy MFer. Art Rennie 6 says, I love the interaction between Milchick and Miss Wong. He put her in her place, and it was so satisfying. That made it sadder to see him torture himself with the paper clips and changing the way he talks.
Moment of silence, Rennie. Exactly right. Vanguard Supreme said Milchick and Lumon are definitely setting Dillon up for self-termination by his jealous Audi self. It's so messed up. Ooh.
Damn.
Catfish. Ooh.
All right, read this next one, then, and I will bring us home.
All right, Cass is twisted, wrote, I think the season 2 twist will be a twist of time, like you said last week, Bubba. However, not for the reasons you state. Mark takes off his watch at 9 p.m.
9 a.m.
I'm sorry. Mark takes off his watch at 9 a.m. on the 4 and puts it back on at 5 p.m. on the 5th. Are any days 32 hours long? Do their families know? Does Gretchen only see Dylan every other day? Does Irving's neighbor come take his dog Radar out to feed him? Cass is twisted. You keep watching those watches, Cass. I love it.
All right, and Patman brings us some heavy-duty talk. This is any Patman on the dynamics between the Audi and Innie versions of the 4 members of MDR. On the extreme negative end, you have Helly versus Helena, with Helly trying to express her agency to the point of self-harm and then having to even the sexual conquest score to balance things out with Helena to Mark's benefit.
Sure.
Patman says Dylan G might not have the same kind of grudge with his Audi that Helly has with Helena, but he's not above wanting more of a relationship with his Audi's wife, Gretchen. It'll be interesting when Audi Dylan gets some kind of inkling about this, and then he'll have a solid grudge with his Innie.
Yes, 100%.
Patman goes on to say, the parts of the episode where Drummond was rooting through Irving's intel files was laying the groundwork of something cool. Just who is Audi Irving working for? Is this some kind of corporate espionage? Is Ragabi working for the same people Irving might be working for? And then to close out our MDRs, he says the high-key bridging, of course, is Mark Scout trying to reintegrate with Mark S. consciousness. Mark S. has an internal motivation to help Mark Scout by returning Miss Casey Gemma to him on the outside. But Patman also brings to the most important person on the show and says Milchick doesn't need to grow up. And he probably doesn't have any childish follies to eradicate.
True.
But the directive to grow, self-improve is pretty compelling. And since I'm hoping that Seth Milchick turns against Lumon, and if he does so by growing above just being a corporate cog as an unintended consequence of their abusive performance review, I'm all for it.
Catfish, can you hear me? Because I edited that whole thing out. Guys, next week, boy, there are only 3 episodes left. It's season 2, episode 8, Sweet Vitriol, a.k.a. they're going to do an episode like our podcast. The description reads, discoveries are made. My name's Bubba. You can find me on social media at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at social media Fit and Trim.
And my name is Catfish. You can hit me up at G to the man, GETOTHEMAN on Blue Sky and Instagram. And don't forget to hit us up at double PHQ.
Yeah.
That's the word double, the letters PHQ.
Sure.
And we will talk to you next week on
Milchick Man.